Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. Today we're joined by John R. Lund, who's an attorney at law at Parsons Behle Latimer and immediate past president of the Utah State Bar, and Rick Hoffman, who's the owner of Peak Valuation Group. And they are both on the board of the Utah Legal Sandbox. I'll let you guys clarify what that is. How's it going?
Good, Garrett. Yeah. So, Rick, you want to clarify or should I clarify?
I'll take a shot. So to me, what the sandbox is Utah is kind of the front runner in the country of opening the door to people who aren't lawyers, don't have a law degree, to help solve some legal problems. And so it's the first time in the country that a non-lawyer can use their business brain to help. The problem we're really trying to solve is to get legal services. There's a lot of legal services that people just can't afford to buy, including rich people. Businesses all the time skip asking a lawyer for stuff. And so this is the opportunity for businesses to help solve that problem through some innovative means.
Gotcha. And is there any more context you want to provide, John?
Well, I think that probably the rest of the context is Utah is essentially leading the country on this and has the first of these experiments open. But for those who might be looking to kind of try something out in the sandbox, I'm on a group in California that's looking to doing the same thing in California. I just spoke with people in Washington State last, week about something like this. Arizona has something going like this. And, our overall goal really here is to change the ecology around how legal services are provided. So it's not just one lawyer providing services to one client, typically at a one hourly rate, which is essentially the model that we've had for decades, but it's a whole realm of innovative approaches, non-lawyer investment, non-lawyer ownership, non-lawyer guidance, multidisciplinary practices. Maybe you mix the lawyer. We have one person so far that's just focused on dentists, but they're doing everything for dentists. It's soup to nuts. It's financial planning, it's tax planning, it's estate planning. All of that's in one package along with the legal services. So. And then I think it's probably, of interest to your group, Garrett, and your audience, we really think technology is a key element to broadening this market for legal services. Instead of one-to-one services, it's one-to-many, just like we see in so many other settings with services being provided on the internet.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll get into some good examples of how those listening will benefit from this. But where did the idea come from to form kind of this group and launch it recently?
I guess I'll probably take a stab at that. The bottom line is one of the justices of the Utah Supreme Court, Justice Dino Himones, and I basically met this economist who is essentially an economist and a lawyer who wrote a great book about reimagining how we regulate lawyers. Her name's Jillian Hadfield. She's a great dynamo, and frankly, she brings the whole economic element of this, because what we're really talking about is changing the way the business structure of legal entities is allowed to be, not really the quality of the services. So that was a couple of years ago, and we've essentially just continued to move the ball forward in Utah. Our court's been very supportive of moving ahead. We enlisted Rick and some other people here last summer to start to really run the office, which is when they let us start basically open up the sandbox last summer.
Gotcha. And obviously a lot of work's gone into it, and you start out at a big, broad level and you boil it down. So can we do some real world examples of maybe the former way things worked, and then with this kind of newer model, why it's better and how it'll look in the future?
Sure.
You want me to take a crack?
Absolutely.
Well, it's wide open, but it's everything from having chat bots or some other automated dispensary of information, of legal information. So imagine a world where a chat bot can answer your simple legal questions, where you don't have to call a lawyer and you don't have to hire somebody, but much more efficiently. It could be a wide range of marketing techniques that help people find the right person who's truly an expert in whatever legal question they have. And then the software seems to be where things are headed, even combining. There's a lot of people who have an expertise that ends up teaching them a lot about the law. Imagine people who deal with property that end up being pretty good at understanding contracts for properties. And so it allows people who have developed the expertise to efficiently capture the value of that by providing those services where they otherwise haven't been able to do that.
Okay.
So one of the specific ones that, I think it's kind of everybody seems to kind of say, I'll sign up for that, is this group has created an app that when you get a spam phone call, on your phone, you just swipe right. And the effect of that is to create a little evidence, proof that you got a call from a certain number, and you're automatically loaded into their mass class action claim against that spammer. Now, I don't know if everybody wants to be signed up to be in a class action lawsuit, but I know everybody's irritated with spammers, right? And
Yep.
If you, in the old days, before that type of thing, said, oh, I want to get a lawyer involved to help me fix this problem with the fact that I keep getting spammed, where would you even go? Would you want to spend the hundreds of dollars per hour to, have some lawyer help you out with it? But these people kind of have greased that to where you can sign up and participate.
Okay.
That's a real world example, I guess, Garrett.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a lot of times over my life where I'm talking to somebody and it's around a business formation or real estate transaction or whatever. And they say, I'm not a lawyer, but,
Yeah.
And then their advice is, perfectly spot on.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I just saved a bunch of money. Thank you. But they're always covering their assets.
Yeah.
I'm
And
not a
there's,
lawyer, but
Totally.
and you've probably had other times where you had a legal question and you talked to somebody who wasn't a lawyer because it wouldn't make any sense to call a lawyer for that question. And you ended up getting bad advice. That if the system had been set up so that you could get good legal advice for an amount that makes sense given your question, that's what this opportunity is all about. And there's a lot of examples. There's one group who's doing a really good job helping divorced women who aren't receiving the proper child care payments. And so just retrieving that probably doesn't make sense for a lot of people based on the amount, but they figured out a way to do it where it does make sense because they've streamlined it so well.
And a lot of that stuff is technology driven. Like there's somebody that wrote an algorithm to where somebody's taking a divorce can just go through and fill out the financial disclosure. How much do you make? What other assets do you have? The whole list of issues. And the thing's just doing the math. It's almost like a TurboTax type of an application that generates the necessary document that the court needs in order to do it. Now, you could do that with your lawyer, or you could be running your own divorce and just want to help with that particular form. So that's kind of where the technology piece is coming in, is algorithmic approaches to, Q&A type stuff that gets people the right answers to things. And then, you're creating levels. If the algorithm can't get to the right answer, A or B, well, then it kicks up to a lawyer, and then it gets more efficiently handled at that level.
okay. So the platform's kind of marrying up two markets, the consumer that oftentimes is probably not too happy in life and needs a lawyer, needs advice, needs something, and then the algorithm and the tech, and then ultimately, if it can't be facilitated and helped, an actual person with that expertise. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there's room for non-lawyer investment in all of that, right? So maybe a lawyer's got the basic idea, but they really need some money to build out the concept. In our sandbox, that investor can own an interest in the venture, whereas in the old way, the only people that could own an interest in an entity providing legal services were lawyers. It was just a real constraint. It is a constraint on bringing capital, to bear on, and for that matter, business acumen and all those other things that lawyers maybe don't have as much of as they think they do.
Sure.
And I think this is particularly exciting for people because Utah's first. It seems like there's the way it's going to go. It's hard to imagine how we're not going to let computers solve problems more efficiently across the whole country. But until the regulatory restrictions are lifted, you just can't do that. And in Utah, now we're letting people, experiment in this sandbox in a way that if they can figure out smart ways to do it, I think will be available in much larger parts of the country, much larger in terms of population, parts of the country here very soon.
Yeah. So it seems like it levels the playing field for a lot of people, both those that don't have a ton of cash, time, and resources, even for those that do.
Right.
And it's a fairly new idea and concept, and the rollout's fairly fresh. What's been the reception so far from kind of the end user, but then also, are there attorneys and law firms that might not like this idea?
That's your question, John.
Well, as far as the reception from the consumers that we're trying to get to, I think we have 16 or 17 entities now that are approved and are up and running and starting to get out there and offer services to people. And one of the things we're doing, which is kind of a new element in the law profession, is we're developing data about what those consumers are experiencing, what their reactions to are, are they getting the outcomes they expected? Do they have complaints? There's a data flow coming back to us, which is just like brand new. I mean, that's, if you compare that to the lawyer model, the lawyer goes to law school, they take the bar exam, they pass character and fitness, they get approved to admit to the bar. And the only time, you ever hear from them again is if they end up with a bar complaint, but there's no real feedback loop at all for lawyers. So we're starting to see the feedback from our participants, consumers, just in the form of that monthly data flow that's coming back to us. As far as the lawyers, frankly, our Utah lawyers have been generally supportive of this. They understand there's big segments of the society that just aren't tapping into legal services at all and need to. It's like 85% of the people in the courts don't have a lawyer with them. They're in there trying to negotiate it for themselves. We've tried to make it clear that it's a market for everybody. It's a market for the lawyers, it's a market for the non-lawyers, and ultimately it's a benefit to the consumers to broaden the range of the various options that are out there. I don't think, we're not expecting law firms like Parsons Behle Latimer, to have major elements of their business undercut when they're working for, corporate concerns and the like. It's really not that market that I think these solutions go to.
Yeah. So you've got a dozen plus kind of in the hopper you mentioned. Fast forwarding a year or two, you guys have obviously put in a lot of time and effort into this. What would be a happy result in the next year or two? How would this look, and what would be the application rate?
You want me to try that, Rick? You can answer that one.
I think you should. I think you're better off on that one.
All right. Well, the short answer is we're really focused on whether any of these things are causing harm to consumers. And that's going to be the first question is, have these people been able to operate safely and effectively and give something valuable to consumers without causing harm to them? Because, the concern is, well, they're not lawyers. They're some different thing. And is there going to be some kind of harm? So that's the number one question is can we answer whether or not there's really a harm being caused? The positives past that are kind of pretty major. I mean, you could have long-term solutions in our state that are non-lawyer delivered that are more affordable, more accessible. That's a plus for everybody. Somebody's got a tool, for example, that's just helping people get their criminal records cleared, so they can get a job, so they can get an apartment. I mean, I'm not sure how you exactly argue with those things in terms of those being worthwhile. Right. But next step is maybe a few other states follow suit and you really start to drive a whole new market. I mean, my example there, Garrett, is I remember a day, I don't know if you're a coffee drinker, but I've been a coffee drinker like all my life since law school. I used to pay 79 cents for a cup of coffee at 7-Eleven. And I used to think it was a good cup of coffee.
Sure.
And then Starbucks came along, and drove this whole expectation about what ought to be involved in your coffee to where now there's this huge market around coffee. And of course, it's not just Starbucks, it's a whole, wide range of different people that provide different variable types of approaches to how you can get your coffee fix. Well, that's a trite example at some level, but I think that's kind of the same dynamic we were hoping may evolve here, is that those market forces really just create a whole different ecology as to where people go for legal services. I mean, I don't know how many of your listeners would have signed up to lease an apartment, but I'll bet that when they did that, they didn't give too much thought to the language in the lease that they were signing, right?
Right.
And they sure wouldn't have spent, however many $100 an hour to have a lawyer review the lease for an apartment that they're just going to pay $1,000 a month for. But if you could divide, you come up with the right tool that would, scan that thing and analyze it, with the technologies that are available and give them good answers to what kind of lease they were getting into, maybe they'd pay, $20 for that and get some value. So that's to me, the real upside potential is to create those kind of opportunities for the services.
Yeah, and my happy result would be that some solutions that people just simply aren't getting any help with, and the easy one to think of is people who are having a tough time financially. That so many of the cases in court are bad debt collection actions, which almost by definition, the person that's on the wrong end of that, we know they don't have a lot of money, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have defenses and fights, and that they should get help in resolving that. And so to me, a happy ending is where somebody's problem is being solved with good legal advice in a way that makes sense. The cost makes sense relative to their problem.
But let's combine those two for a minute, because right now the legal system really only looks at that person that's got a debt collection action against them when they finally show up in court, when there's finally papers filed against them. Okay. I would think some of your, imaginative, innovative thinkers that, are part of a group like Silicon Slopes could figure out that if they could get with that person who owes money on a credit card before the thing gets to that point, they could help them find a solution, that was a win-win solution before they're down there at the debtor's court, and that's the type of evolution of the services that maybe is possible if we let some innovation happen.
Yeah, got it. So this is an innovative product, and I guess just like everything else in the world, you've got to do that. One, we have the tools and the capabilities and the bandwidth now. I was in a probably this 40-year-old F-150 a weekend ago, and then I was in a brand new buddy's F-150 this weekend, and it's interesting to look and see and feel all of those changes, right? Yeah. And technically the 40-year-old F-150 does what it's supposed to. It drives and turns on, but my goodness, imagine if they would have just sat on their laurels and called that good.
Sure.
The world passes you by pretty quick.
For sure.
And the other point of that is those technologies in your buddy's F-150 today, because they can mass produce them, they can get that down to an affordable number, to really deliver that service. And that's part of what we're trying to explore here, is to, that one-to-many option really is a lot easier. And frankly, this is what I say to lawyers. You can leverage your own brain power, your own creativity, your own skills as a lawyer here by partnering with those type of arrangements, and probably creating a better future for yourself than if you just keep working by the hour for one client at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. Eventually every kind of business model either evolves or dies, goes to the graveyard. And there's some that you're pulling by their fingernails. And it always seemed like the legal profession was one of those where the world's kind of been pulling them. And this seems like a good answer to that.
I think so.
We do want it to be safe, right? I mean, just like the F-150 today has got, those technologies have to work, and that's part of what our responsibility is to the court, is to make sure that these innovations are not dangerous somehow, detrimental to people. So there is that side of it.
Yep. All right. So it sounds like it's a broad array of folks that are listening to this that could benefit from it. How can people get involved? One, as possibly helping, two, contributing, and then three, being a consumer. Where should they go?
Well, they can go online. The best way to get involved is as an applicant or as somebody who wants to try out their innovative idea, is if you go online and you can follow the application process, and it has the rules to that. And that's the best way. As far as consumers, I hope that they will see and start seeing opportunities for solutions that maybe they don't even understand, that they're getting what's technically legal advice, but they're getting problems solved cheaply.
All right.
The place to go online is sandbox.utcourts.gov. That's our website. And there's not only an opportunity to fill out your application there if you want to try an innovation, but you can see the packets on the entities that have been authorized. So if you wanted to get an idea of the detail of what's already been approved by the court and what's out there, those are on that website as well. Lots of FAQs and the whole 9 yards. The question about getting the public, that's a really good question, Garrett. I guess we're still guessing a little bit what consumers want, and part of this is making the legal services more accessible. I guess like any realm of innovation, some people are going to try something and it's going to fall flat because consumers really didn't care about it that much, But I think that's where consumers come in, is they're going to be the market. They either responds to these ideas or doesn't. Like, I'll bet that, you have some of your listeners wondering where they can sign up for that swipe right thing. I mean, that's maybe worth it, right? It doesn't cost you anything. So that's where I see consumers getting in the picture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite the thought there. And hopefully they crack that nut, because there's nothing worse than a spam call when you're trying to have a productive day.
Yep.
I mean, I've had 3 as we've been talking, and it's a holiday.
You're on a list. You're on a list. Okay. Well, very cool. Congrats to you and your team. I know there's a lot of folks that were involved in this, and there's a lot more that will be involved in the future. And this is definitely a value add to the community. And oftentimes these types of partnerships and committees and boards aren't appreciated. But it's been a sacrifice for a lot of people, and a lot of time's gone into it. So appreciate you both being involved in that, and appreciate you both taking the time to kind of educate the listeners here. And we'll look forward to watching how this thing rolls out and how it lives and breathes into the future.
Wonderful. Thank you for giving us the time.
Yes, that all sounds good. Thanks, Garrett. Good talking with you.
Thank you.
Take care.